Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode number 114 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today the host of How Did It Happen podcast, Mike Malatesta. Sit back, everyone, and enjoy. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. We had a little technical issues, but we're up and running and live now with Mike Malatesta. What is up, brother?
Happy to wait for you anytime, Jeff.
I got scared there for a bit. I was like, oh man, I was waiting for this interview and it didn't look like it was going to happen for a couple of minutes there. But excited to have Mike on. Mike is a podcast host. How'd You Do It? Incredible podcast. I was fortunate enough to be a guest on there and excited to talk about your journey. When I usually start off our podcast, we actually start talking about where you currently are, what you're currently doing. But I want to take it a little different with you. I want to actually start off with Mike as a kid. Where'd you grow up? How many siblings did you have? How was your childhood? Let's start from there and let's start the whole journey. Let's make this a fun story here today.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we'll go way back. So I was born in 1965 and I grew up in Havertown, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Philadelphia. The first place I lived was above a delicatessen called Terry's. I lived there briefly. And then we moved around the corner to, they call it a twin house. You know, we were basically attached to my mother's parents.
Yeah.
And Havertown's a great little town. It's a working class town. My mom was, she was homemaker for most of the time. Then when we grew up, she got a job at the parish rectory and she would clean up, after the priests and, make sure everything was good there. And then she went to work at the post office after that. My dad was a truck driver most of his career. He had an office job for a little while, Jeff. And I think he had this little crisis about I should be doing something else with my life, but he went back to truck driving and ultimately retired from, I think he passed away before he retired from UPS.
Yeah.
So I had a great childhood.
How old was your dad when he passed away, you mind me asking?
60, unfortunately.
So he was very young still. So how old were you?
I'm 55.
No, how old were you when your dad passed away?
Oh, I'm sorry. So what's that? 17 years ago. So I was 38, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know. And why am I just even talking about this is something that last couple of years. And I think I've been talking about it for some reason a lot lately more is how I'm realizing how time is a currency and I try to live with no regrets. So even with my dad, I talk about it all the time. If my dad calls me now, years back, I'd be like, yeah, Dad, no worries. It's a Monday. I'll come see you on Saturday. Come help you. And now if my dad calls me on Monday, I jump in the car and go see him because he's in his 70s and he went through a pretty rough little health situation about a year ago. So I'm very, very always have a mindset of, I don't want to live with regrets. I don't want to have that opportunity of something happening to him and then living with regret, like I didn't go see him or I didn't go give him a call. So, I mean, I'm 44 and I still call my mom every single morning and I call my mom every single night before I go to bed. And it's this built-in habit because it's just, I mean, time is so precious. And I think it's that currency. I think a lot of people don't realize it. And some people live their whole life and don't even realize how important it is. Right. So I apologize for cutting you off, but I mean, it just rings something in my head when you said that. So
that's okay. I remember you talking about that on the podcast when we did it. And, my dad's thing was kind of strange because I was really close to my dad, but I haven't lived at home since I got out of college. So as soon as I got out of college, 2 weeks later, I was on the road and I've never gone back. In fact, for most of the time I've lived far away. So even though we were close, we didn't see each other very often. And I didn't even know he was sick, Jeff. until, because he was a very private guy, which I appreciated. He had cancer and he'd been fighting it, and he didn't want to, bother the kids, and told my mom not to tell anybody. And ultimately, I didn't find out that he was sick and dying until, just he had to go into hospice. I mean, it was like, near the end. Now, it turned out he ended up living for a few months after that, but it was not the way that I expected.
Yeah, of course.
I guess things to go, and I miss him a lot. 60's super young, and I still have a lot of things that I got to figure out in my life that I could use him, his help with.
Yeah. I mean, that is very young. I mean, and you don't even realize, and I think this is something I think we talked about. I mean, the average age they say the average person lives to roughly around 80. When you actually think of that number, take your number, like I'm 44. So, I mean, when you think about it, I got 36 summers left, which is absolutely not. When you start thinking about numbers like that, it puts things in perspective, right? And so I mean, losing a parent at a very young age is hard, because there's a lot of things like you said, there's so many times things will come up and you just want to give them a phone call and ask that question or ask that stuff. Yeah. So I appreciate that. So in college, when you got out of college, you went on your own. What was your first career? What was your first job out of college?
Out of school?
Yeah.
I worked for a company called Browning Ferris Industries. They were at the time the second largest trash company in the world. So I got into the trash business while I was in college, Jeff, as a driver. But I really enjoyed the experience, which probably a lot of people can't wrap their head around that. But I really liked that, and I decided that I wanted to give it a shot as a career. So I got hired as a management training candidate, and I ended up getting shipped around to 4 or 5 different places where I was learning the business, and then for the first couple of years, all the different facets, and then I started to get jobs with responsibility and that kind of thing. So that was my first job, and I had that for 5 years, and then ultimately I ended up transferring to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which was a brand new experience for me. But after about 15 months in the job in Milwaukee, I got fired from the job, and so it was one of those deals where I'd been with them 5 years. I thought I had a shot at being the CEO of that company. I really thought that, if I put my time in, nose to the grindstone, do what I'm supposed to do, I would get there
climb up the corporate ladder.
Yeah, climb up the ladder. So I was happy to move around. I was happy to I was a yes person. Whatever opportunity they presented to me, I said yes, which I think more people need to do these days, but that's another thing. But at a young age, at least. But yes, so there I was. I'd just been married right before we moved to Milwaukee. So 15 months, I thought, oh, this is my career. My new wife comes with me, and then I'm out of a job. So
how old were you at that time when you got married?
Got married at 24. Just before I would turn 25. So 24. Yeah. So anyway, we were there, and we had to figure out, do I get another job? Do I, what do I do? And, ultimately so back to Havertown for a second. When I was living in the house attached to my grandparents, there was a construction company across the street, like an excavation company. And they had, dump trucks and low boys and machinery. And I would, in the afternoon, in the summers, I'd sit on the curb and I'd watch these guys bring their trucks back in, bring their rigs back in. And I just loved that. And, the smoke and the noise and everything. And then the guys were nice to me, and they'd give me like something out of their lunch, that they didn't need or whatever. It was kind of a really neat thing. And I never, all throughout grade school, high school, I was really into trucks and drawing trucks and drawing trucks with my name on the side, like it would be something I would end up doing. And ultimately, that led me into truck driving when I was in college and into garbage. And then, so at the time when I was looking for something to do, I thought to myself, well, I had these little dreams of maybe, at least on paper, of having my own stuff. Yeah. And I kind of forgot about all that in college, got this job. Well, now here I was with time to think about it again. And ultimately we ended up deciding to start a business with a buddy of mine. And we started an industrial waste trucking company, Jeff, which again, not a dream for most people, but for us, it involved trucks. We were doing, it was hard work. It was not work that required you to be an expert in, technology or anything really. You just had to grit. So we started a business hauling wastewater around Milwaukee and Illinois area. And from there, like over a good period of time, it grew into a really, big business.
So it was you and your partner. First off, where'd you meet your partner first off?
I met him where I was working, Jeff. So Butch is his name. And I met him where I was working. He was I didn't know him well though. So he was sort of the maintenance person, but he did a lot more than that, but he didn't have a management role. And I was, they called me a district manager. So Butch was on the team that I had. And like I said, I didn't know him very well, but he was always impressive. I mean, the guy was just mechanically gifted, and he was super smart too. So, but when I left there, when I got fired, I really didn't have Butch in mind at all for anything, Jeff. He actually reached out to me, maybe it was a month or so later, and actually through another person who knew how to get a hold of me, because he didn't even know how to get a hold of me. And he was like, "Hey, if you're thinking about starting a business, I'd like to be involved in it." And I was like, "Butch, what the heck? Where's that coming from?" But when I got that message, I had been thinking about what to do and all, and I got that message, and I thought to myself, well, let me go talk to him about this. And we started at the kitchen table, with some Miller High Lifes and just kind of shooting the shit. And all of a sudden, we had this idea for a business.
When was the first time you hired your first employee? How long after?
Well, we had a guy we had a salesperson that we had almost from the beginning, but he was on a contract basis. And I'd say it was, within 6 months, we had him and another driver. So we had 4 people within the first 6 months.
How long did you guys have the company for?
22 years.
Wow. Okay. Beautiful. And where did it grow into? Give me a landscape of the actual size of the company and how many trucks you guys ended up with. And eventually, I guess did you guys have an exit strategy on at the end, or the company just closed down? Like what happened at the end?
Okay. So there's a lot of points in there. I'll highlight a few of them. So the company ultimately ended up at about 150 team members, and we had 5 or 6 locations throughout the upper Midwest. And by locations, we had we went from a trucking company into a full service company. So we built treatment facilities where we would recycle wastewater and process a lot of other waste. And we had, a handful of those in Pennsylvania and Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin. And those were, we had collect trucks at every one of those. So we probably had, we had, hundreds of pieces of equipment. And then we had our plants where we had a lot of different kinds of equipment in those. But in 2003, the same year that my dad passed away, Butch passed away as well. He died. He was burned very badly in a fire at one of our plants. So he was doing work renovating a plant of ours, and yeah, he was inside a tank. The tank caught on fire, and yeah, he made it out of the tank. He made it to the hospital, but a couple days later, his body started to shut down. Which was when I first heard. I wasn't there when it occurred, but when I first heard it, I thought, oh, and I heard it from the Jeff, who was another Jeff that worked with us, who was really like Butch's partner on doing all kinds of creative and build projects. And he sounded really concerned. And I thought, no, Butch is the strongest guy I've ever met. You know, Jeff's just exaggerating. You know, this is going to be okay. And because he was the strongest person I ever met. Like, just one of those guys that never lifted a weight, a real weight, like a gym weight in his life. But everything he did involved weight his whole life. So, but anyway, so yeah, a couple days after that, he passed away, and that was a really bad time for all of us. But so he didn't make it to the end, I guess, is the point. But we did manage to regroup and move ahead, and for another 12 years or so before we sold the business. So we did sell the business, Jeff, in 2015. It was I would call it a very successful sale.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's that chapter.
With Butch, how yourself, I mean, that is a pretty heavy burden to actually have your partner. I mean, that was a very traumatic time. How did you deal with it? Like how long, and you're never going to get over, but how long were you able to, like, okay, I'm going to get back into the rhythm, like going through that, right? Even just going to work every day, because he was there building it up with you. So I can't even imagine you just even going to work on a regular basis. Like how long did it take for you to, even the mental side? And I think it's something that's important for people to understand, because it's a very traumatic time for you, right?
Yeah. How did I deal with it? Well, poorly, I guess I would say in a word. There was, so when it happened, Jeff, so we were about 10 years into the business. And if you were looking at us from the outside, you would say, wow, those guys have really done well. And we had done well. But for me, I was very worn out even before this occurred. So I was very worn out because that was the model that I designed for the business. Everything, I was involved in everything. Everything ran through me. That was how I valued myself. Yeah. And after 10 years of that or so, or maybe less, maybe longer for some people, you can only do so much. And I was never convinced that I could only do so much. I was always convinced that I could do more.
Yeah.
But I was unhappy with the way that things were happening to me, even though they were happening exactly the way that I wanted them, that I had set them up to happen to me. So I was already questioning myself, and then this happens, and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I mean, and I went into, so I call it like a uncertainty gap. I went into this sort of gap, or valley, where I was just kind of like, for a couple years, Jeff, I was just kind of like walking around. I was coming to work. It wasn't like I was, a basket case on the outside or anything. I was doing, most of what I was supposed to be doing, but I was really questioning myself. And
when you look back at it, and this is nothing, like nothing to pin on, but it's something where even myself, I've been through it. Like, did you find yourself going through moments of, now that you could look back and reflect on it, moments of you were depressed in certain times of it?
I think so. I was disappointed in myself, I think, more than anything, because I was,
you set the expectations so high.
Yeah. And then after, one of the mistakes I think a lot of entrepreneurs make, and this is one that I definitely made during this period, is I thought I was entitled to something different. Like I thought, okay, I put my time in. So why isn't, life and the world treating me differently?
Yeah.
And I think that happens to a lot of us. We think, oh yeah, this shouldn't be, I shouldn't be dealing with this stuff. This shouldn't be happening to me, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like I said a couple of times already, when I really got inside myself and looked at it, I said, geez, I mean, this is happening because this is exactly the way that I've designed it to happen.
Yeah.
And so I had to change things. I couldn't go on, so I had to change. And during that period, I was very fortunate to get, like, I'd never been outside of my business either, Jeff. Like, I thought these networking groups and these support groups and these coaching groups were all BS. I thought those are all for people who just want to, who either can't do it, can't hack it like me, can't work as hard, or lazy, or some other thing I would make up. And I would just, but I didn't realize that, I created this sort of wall around myself, inside of which I knew everything and I felt very comfortable, and outside of which I thought I didn't need anything else. But what I didn't understand was that I'd learned everything I could from the people inside my walls.
Yeah.
And if I've learned everything, if I've learned everything from them, they've learned everything from me. So I have nothing new to offer and they have nothing new to offer. Where are we going to end up?
Yeah.
So thanks to some friends and other sort of convergences, like this breakfast meeting that I went to, I started getting recommendations, and I started hearing about really programs that I could become part of that would actually help me through what I was dealing with, and put me around people, Jeff, who may or may not have dealt with what I had to deal with, but they were always looking to how they could make their futures better for themselves.
It's community. Community.
Community. Yeah. And I didn't have that. And so I was very fortunate during that period to take that first step. And that led me to a program called Strategic Coach. And Strategic Coach is an entrepreneurial coaching program that ended up being one of several that I've joined and continued to participate in. But it was instrumental in making me feel and think differently about what my role as an entrepreneur really was, because I had it all screwed up. And that program, I resisted for a long time, Jeff, but it finally, when I submitted, I finally got to understand what I needed to be doing to make this business a continued success and to lead the team.
Yeah, I love that. So let's transition now. We exit the company. Where's the gap from there to podcasting? What happened in between that, and how did you end up in the podcast world?
Okay. So I sold the company in 2015. I stayed on to work for the new owner.
I'm going to ask you, sorry, I'm going to interrupt there. How was that experience staying on working with the new owner? Because I've had a couple of companies I've exited, and that was part of the negotiation. And I always refused, because I've never worked for anybody before, and I kind of refused to. How was that experience knowing that you're working for somebody that was your company? Was that hard?
Yes. So this trips up a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think here's how I handled it. You tell me if it's makes any sense to you. Before I signed the papers to sell the business, I told myself, once I sell this business, it's no longer mine.
Yeah.
It belongs to someone else. And if I'm going to stay, my job is to make it work for them the way they want it to work, which may be different than the way I want it to work.
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, I started off with the right mindset going into it. Now, and they were very nice to me and very, very courteous, respectful. They would ask my opinion on a lot of things, and they wouldn't always take it. They wouldn't always do what I thought was the best thing to do. And, that as an entrepreneur, 22 years, where pretty much everything I wanted, I could probably get done. That was a little bit different, but it was also good because it's, it stung at first, but then I was like, oh, okay. So there is another way of looking at this. I may not have thought of that, or I may have tossed it aside, but let's see. So you've made the decision now, my boss, you made the decision. How do I, help this be a good decision? And so I tried to stay in that mind frame the whole time I was there, Jeff.
And how long were you there for after?
Almost 3 years.
That's a while.
It's a long time. Yeah, it's unusual.
Yeah, usually you hear is 1 year. Like one of the negotiations I was working on, it would be a 1 year or a little over 1 year, and both times that came up, I just couldn't. I mean, like I said, I've been self-employed my whole life. I just couldn't justify standing there in something I built and now taking orders to do that. I just couldn't, in my mind, I just couldn't handle it. But okay,
and there's nothing wrong with that. I applaud you on that, because it's the people that get caught in the middle of that, like, I can do it, and then they're unhappy because they really didn't want to do it any differently, But yeah, man, when someone writes you a check for something, it's no longer yours. So you got to get over that.
Yeah, I know.
Because it was your choice to take it. That's how I looked at it. So I took it, and now it's no longer mine.
Yeah. So fast forward now from that gap when you did sell it after 3 years. What window to you got into the actual podcasting world? What looking at window wise?
It was near the end. In fact, getting into podcasting was one of the reasons that I ultimately, decided to leave, because it was more exciting to me than working there anymore. And I wasn't needed, Jeff. I mean, the reality was I was not needed in that business any longer, which is the way it should be.
Yeah.
You want to get the most money for your business. Here's a lesson for everybody. Make sure it doesn't need you, right? Because people like businesses that can run without entrepreneurs who think they want to stay but might leave at a moment's notice because they don't have to work anymore, for example.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to work for someone else. But I thought one of the reasons that I sold was that I had all of these book writing ideas, Jeff, and I considered myself to be a writer, and I wanted to, spend time doing that, and had started books and never finished them. And I'm like 3 years into having sold the business almost, and I'm like, I haven't done anything on that. Like, this is one of the reasons I wanted to do it. I haven't done anything. But along the way, I started listening to podcasts, which were new for me in like 2017. I hadn't listened to a podcast before. And I started listening to podcasts, and I was writing, and I was like, man, writing is really hard. Like, for me to write 1,000 words that's worth somebody publishing, or even myself it takes a long time.
Yeah.
I said, but these podcasts are just like sort of contemporaneous conversations, and I may not be the best at that, but I'm not the worst at it. So I thought I'd try it. And so I came up with a name, how'd it happen? And then I just started doing it in 2018, at the end of 2018. So that's how I got into it, and I love it. It's been, it's been for a guy that's like me, who's very curious, who enjoys one-on-one conversations, and I'm fortunate enough that my age and the various things I've done, I know a little about a lot of stuff, so I can pretty much hold my own with most people, which allows me to talk to a very wide range of people, and it just really gives me energy. I mean, I look forward to them, and then I'm like, get into it, and I start in one place, and we end up in another place, and I think to myself, how did we get there? And they're thinking to themselves the same thing. What I really love about podcasts is that most people are very, very, I guess, conditioned to be in a narrow range when they have a conversation. It's like, here's what I talk about. And in a podcast, people are willing in the right environment with the, they're willing to get outside of that.
Yeah.
In a way that they don't even realize, first of all, a lot of the times, and two, they don't care. It's just totally different than, for a lot of people, it's totally different than how they've been conditioned to be. And I like that a ton. I really do.
How many episodes have you recorded already?
I've recorded 181 or 2 right now.
Is there any top 1 or 2 that really sticks in your head, like great story or great connection or it was just a great conversation?
It's like so hard, right? So I'd say no. And the reason I'm going to say no is because there's been one that I've done where I'm like, I shouldn't have done that one.
Interesting.
Like it was one of those ones, Jeff, where I felt like the guy, he happened to be a guy in this, was thought he was doing me a favor. And I didn't like how that felt. Yeah. Even though he was, everybody who comes on is really doing me a favor.
No.
He made it feel like he was doing me a favor. And then, I thought, so I didn't know what his motivation was. I questioned myself over that, but everyone else, I'd say, I would, to me, everybody I've interviewed is interesting, and they all have great stories. Almost everybody has a great story.
Yeah.
But as I've gone along, I started locally and, in the business community in Wisconsin where I am. There's so many great stories there. And then really once COVID came along and I couldn't do that anymore,
So your original ones were all in person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did not do a Zoom until COVID. And I kind of, I was a little scared, Jeff, because I thought it's not going to be the same as me.
How are you going to build
down with
interaction?
somebody.
Yeah.
But I found that it actually isn't that different.
I enjoy it.
You and I are thousands of miles apart or whatever we are, and it just doesn't feel that different now to me than if we were in person. But so anyway, once I started doing them on Zoom, I could go anywhere. So that's been great because I've had conversations with people in Italy and South Africa and Germany and all these different places, as well as all throughout the U.S. and North America, and it really widens it. And
it's incredible. I had in a 2-week period, I had 2 from the UK, 1 from Nigeria, and 1 from Thailand, all in a 2-week period. Those main interviews. It's amazing, right? This morning I did one from Australia, and I was in the office. We recorded at 6 a.m. Eastern Toronto time, which is your time too. So we recorded at 6 a.m. and which was 8 p.m. In Australia. So I was just at the office early. So it's incredible how I find the last 12 months when I actually started my podcast and really started branding, for the first time, I felt like the world was so small.
Yeah.
So incredible how I'm either networking or on a podcast or a guest on a podcast. I've been a guest on 57 podcasts in the last 4 months, which is incredible.
No, yeah, that's amazing.
And then plus I still record 1 or 2, usually 2 a week on my own. Plus I try to network with at least minimal 12 to 15 people a week. I try to network and just build relationships with. So I'm on Zoom all the time.
Yeah.
And then I even have Zoom meetings with my staff sometimes I'll stay home with the kids and I'll have a Zoom meeting with my staff. So I'm literally on this thing 24/7. So it's allowed me to really, really, really see how small the world is.
Yeah, it's that's a great point. And I've gotten so used to it that I was a non-Zoom person before, non-video conference. It was like one of those things where if someone sent me a video conference invite, I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Can't we just do it by phone? Now I prefer it because if I can't be with you, I can't engage with you on the phone the way I can here. We can do it on the phone, but it's just not the same. And as far as the small world thing goes, I mean, just think about before Zoom came along or podcasting came along, for example. I look at the people I've had on my show. If I had just called them and said, "Oh, hey, Mike, I'd love to just call you and talk to you for an hour," would that be okay with you? I would never get through to the person. That message would never be delivered. But I send them an email or a LinkedIn and I say, "Hey, I've got this show. Would you be willing to come on and talk to me?" And hardly anybody says no.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, everybody's got hours that they're willing to spend with somebody they don't even know, like me.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like, and we talked about this. That was one of the reasons I did the podcast myself originally it was to be able to network and create a platform for me to bring on guests, the people that I wanted to interact or talk with. Because it's just, you're now all of a sudden now you have a platform for them, and everybody loves having a platform to talk about themselves or tell their story. So it just opens up the door so much more to, like you said, networking, connecting, and building relationships. And some of the, like, through people on my podcast, these are relationships where I'll probably have the rest of my life now. Like we become close friends. Some of these people I have on my podcast, we talk on a weekly basis now. So it's this incredible relationship building and networking with so many different people. Like you said, you never meet before, right? So I love that aspect.
I feel like anyone that's been on my podcast 3 years down the road from now, because I wrote them a note afterwards and we had a good experience, 3 years after they've been on, I will reach out to them and they'll be there. Yeah. I don't know what I would need, but I will reach out to them and they'll be there. That's what I believe. Because like you said, people they like being on a platform, they appreciate the opportunity. And when someone actually cares about the person, like you actually are curious and you care about who they are and what they've done and all of that they remember that stuff.
Yeah. I love what you said with curiosity, because that's something we talked about before. And you've said it about 2 or 3 times in this conversation. Yeah. I think that's the most special conversations when you have the curiosity. You really don't have it staged. You don't have staged questions. You just have a good conversation, because it just makes it interesting, right? Like my mindset every time we do a podcast, and we talked about this, is I try to know as little as I can about the guests, and I just start talking and just let it go. And sometimes I'll be rude. I'll stop them in the middle of the conversation because I want to ask a question, but that's just my curiosity. Just having fun with it. Right. And as long as I'm having fun with it, I'm hoping the guest is having a good experience, and it just makes the conversation flow and it makes a good vibration. Right. So I think the curiosity part of it is very special. Sometimes you go to, like, I've been a guest on some podcasts where they'll email me the night before the 5 questions they're going to ask me.
Right.
And it's like, and be honest, I most of the time I don't even look at them, and I do that on purpose. So I can have just a natural, just relaxed conversation or something like that. Right. But,
well, I think, and I've had several people ask for that. They go, "Yeah, I'll come on your podcast. Can you give me an idea of the questions you're going to ask me?" And I go, "There's only one question that I ask, which is, how did it happen for you? And the rest of it goes wherever it goes. I don't have any questions, so I can't really help you there."
Yeah, I love that.
But people again, it's just like conditioning, Jeff. They have a story they're conditioned to tell about themselves. They have prep that they're conditioned to get, and they're willing, once they get it, it helps them with their mindset or whatever. But I don't want to, to me, that's all programmatic. I don't want to be programmatic. I don't want them to show up knowing that here's what they're going to be asked and here's what they're going to say, because you know what? They've done that thousands of times in their life, and I don't think there's anything that necessarily that special about it.
Yeah. I love that part of it. I ask 2 questions always near the end. And as far as we're saying we don't ask questions, I have 2 questions I keep asking, and the phone's ringing in the background, so I got to edit this out. But superpower. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
So superpower. I guess my superpower, Jeff, is I'm always moving forward, and I'm always optimistic, although I'm not always the most, outgoingly optimistic person in the world, but I am always focused on future progress, making progress, doing a little bit better or a little bit more than I can do today. So I don't know if that's a superpower, but it's something that serves me well.
Yeah, and that's something that's funny because that's how I end all my podcasts when I do my out. And I always say at the end, keep moving forward. I think it's something very special and something in mindset to always never look back, because you can't change the past. Just always keep moving forward. I think it's something that's very special. And if people all focused on it, I think there would be a lot more positivity in this world. You're not focusing on all the negative stuff that happened in the past, right?
Yeah. And I also, just to piggyback on that, I don't watch any TV news. I don't listen to any talk radio. I don't put any negative stuff into my mind that I can avoid putting into my mind.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference too. If something were to happen to you today, Mike, in a few words, how would you want to be remembered, described, or remembered by your loved ones and your closest people to you?
I guess ultimately I'd want to be remembered as someone who cared. I I'm not out to conquer the world at someone else's expense, and I'm not, I guess I'm not out to be anything more than a good person, or as good of a person as I can be, Jeff. And I'm willing to help, anybody that needs or wants help. And I feel like I care about people. I care about the outcomes. I care about, so I guess that's what I would say. Although maybe I'd say something different if I had more time to think about it. I don't know. But
have you ever heard of writing out your living eulogy?
I have.
Have you done it, or have you heard of it?
Both. So I actually wrote a whole chapter in a book about it that it never made it to a book, but where I had like people around and what I was assuming they were saying about me and what I wanted them saying about me. So it's been a long time since I did that. But what's so funny, I was just on a webinar with this guy named Tom Peters. He's a famous sort of culture business author. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But he actually said, I got my notes right here. He said, you've got a resume virtues and eulogy virtues. And you need to think about those in two separate ways. And so it's really interesting that you asked me that question, but it is something that I've done a long time ago. How about you?
Yeah, I do. I've done it, and it changes. I've done it a few times, and it's something that it's so powerful because when you do it, and I think it's something you got to do on your own. I don't think you do this in a group. I think you do it on your own. And when you do it, and you take the time to actually slowly read it to yourself and really suck it in, it changes how you look at things. And it might be for a short window, because humans, we get back to reality. But for that window, that period of time, it really makes you appreciate things a lot more. It makes you act differently towards circumstances when they upfront or come at you, the way you react or the way you interact with people and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's a powerful, simple, but very powerful tool.
Can you give me an example of something you've written during one of these that actually caused you to change?
Yeah. I mean, it's just I'm a very going person. I'm always hyper, go, 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 go. And something one of my last ones I did was I actually wrote, don't react, take a deep breath, and be a person that takes a moment to overview everything. Don't just react to something, sit back and react and understand that. So having that mindset of, he was a person that really took back and really intaked everything before he reacted to stuff. And it was something that I struggled with, and I've struggled with it for years. So I said that would be something I would want people to remember me by, is something that didn't overreact to stuff and sat back and just intake stuff. So something simple like that, it just makes you feel different and think different, because it just, like anything. I mean, you'll be driving a car, somebody cuts you off. It just, how are you going to react to that? If your kids are in the car, how do you want them to remember that moment? So it just makes you think it's simple stuff like that. So simple things like that, I think it's very powerful when you write something down, because it makes you actually see how you're truly living your life, kind of thing. Right.
Yeah. Now, don't minimize that. That's not a simple thing, because words matter. whether you're a leader or a father or spouse or whatever, right? What you say, you can't take back.
Yeah.
So I call that my shut up Mike process. I call it SUMP, SUMP.
Yeah.
So whenever anything like gets me off of where I think I should be, I try never to react right away, like what you were just saying. I tell myself to shut up and I process it, and I make sure that when I say something, it's not the result of the moment, it's the result of the moment after the moment.
Yeah. And it's one thing I actually teach like entrepreneurial dads when I coach them too is, and something I've really practiced for a while now. Every time I get home, right before enter the house, I park in the driveway. I'll actually take a couple of minutes just to kind of reflect on what has just happened throughout the day and kind of just let it out.
Oh, you will?
I do that steadily because it's so easily not to realize certain things agitated you, whether it's in the grocery store, driving, at work, your staff, and you get home. And the minute your kids see you or your wife sees you, your expression on your face or the attitude you might not realize you're having changes their attitude.
Oh
And then
gosh,
the night
so
and the
good.
night is automatically ruined. So I've learned to just literally take a deep breath, intake, just think of, okay, everything was okay. This past, it's gone, it's in the past. Take a deep breath, go in, walk in with a smile, and all of a sudden you get that big smile, your kids smile back, and it's just this different atmosphere. And I've learned to really, really master that. When I get home, I do that steadily. That is something I don't miss because it changes the vibration when you walk in that house, walking in with a smile and giving everybody a hug, not just walking in like, boom, throw your bags down. And just that instant, just coming in, throwing your bags down, not looking at anybody. All of a sudden your wife's in the kitchen, like, oh, here, he's had a bad day. And then she changes her vibration, but it's true. And then the night is ruined, right? So those are little things that I try to do on a regular basis just to make sure that we have this great family environment. And I think I told you, I call it the 3 to 7. So I try to be home every day from 3 to 7. So after this podcast, I'm going to close off and head home. And I try to make sure two things. One, my vibration, our energy is at a great level, and everybody's in a great mood. If we're going to spend that quality time together, it's not in any negative vibration or negative attitude there. And then second, I try to be as present as I can. From 3 to 7, my phone's off, everything's away, and that's my time to be with my kids. Like, let's go for a bike ride, let's go for a hike, let's go for a run. Like, we try to do, now that the weather's good, we try to do at least 1.5 to 2 hours outdoors every single day.
Yeah.
And it takes them out of their environment because they're now we're in lockdown in Toronto, Canada again.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, we're in full lockdown.
Geez.
Stay at home lockdown orders. It is shut down. If you go to your local, this will be aired. Hopefully, actually, we'll probably still be in lockdown by the time this airs. But if you go to your local Costco or Walmart, you can only go in the grocery aisles. All the other aisles are blocked off. You can't buy nothing. It is like literally lockdown. Every restaurant, every gym, schools had I don't even want to talk about this today, but schools had a 99.5% COVID-free rate.
Yeah.
And they still closed all the schools down. I can't even understand. In Canada alone, a little over 10,000 mama papa restaurants have all locked their doors around already. And I deal with the martial arts with my company, Comora, with martial art industry. So all the mama papa martial art gyms we deal with. Ontario alone, we had about 500 we dealt with. So far, 48 have all locked their doors already. Just in Ontario, in our little area. It's crazy. And the government's just locking down to the point where they shut down this week golf courses. They're shutting down all outdoor activity even. And we're like, how do you not want people to be outdoor and be healthy and be active? They want everybody to be locked in their house.
It's amazing to me. And I know this isn't a podcast about, COVID and pandemics, but it's amazing to me with all the examples that are out there of how that strategy has not had a materially positive impact over just letting everybody sort of be careful on their own.
Yeah.
Why we would still be doing that.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago. So we were locked down from December till the first week of March. And then we opened up. And then last week they did literally stay at home to the point where our prime minister, not a prime minister, our mayor, which is kind of like the governor, he actually announced that if you were going to be out on certain areas, cops had the right to pull you over and ask why you're out. And then all the police stations, this is on the news, all the police stations, all the police departments, the next day did social media tweets saying that constitutionally we're not pulling people over. So they went against them. And it was just like, so then he rebutted that and said, "Oh, we'll let that pass." Like, it's just, it's mind-boggling what's going on. And the mental health. Like, I have 2 kids at home, and I'm like, I see how much my son's, the story, he's been through a lot of things, and mentally he needs that interaction. He needs to be socialized. He needs to be around other kids. Him being locked in front of a computer in his bedroom for 8, 7, 6 hours a day, whatever it is, it's doing more damage than good.
Right. That's not.
And that's why when I get home, I'm like, okay, guys, get out of your environment. Let's go. Let's get outside. Let's get fresh air for 2 hours. And then luckily my kids are very active, so they love it. But it's different world we're living in right now, Mike.
Well, I hope that goes away quickly, because that's.
Well, they announced 6 weeks, minimal 6 weeks. So minimal 6 weeks starting last week, 6 weeks minimal for a full lockdown here, full lockdown. Yeah. And I mean, reality is I still have my staff in the office here, but we're not considered we're considered obviously non-essential, but I just have the doors locked in, and I'm like, you guys can still work. Like, through the whole pandemic, I actually kept my staff going as much as I could, and because I didn't want to send them home. So, but it's been a rough year for a lot of businesses, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, everywhere. But that's, to go back to that now. That's I can't see this. I can't see any sense in that.
No, I can't, but it's a tough one to swallow right now. Tough one to swallow. When they announced it a week ago, Mike, I was just like, are they really doing this again? Like, we've been only 5 weeks, 4.5 weeks open. It wasn't even open. It was stores were at 25% capacity. Restaurants were still closed. Restaurants have not opened since, I think, November.
Wow.
So and gyms as well in Ontario and on Toronto and Peel and all these areas around us, all gyms have been closed, all restaurants have been closed, like all those things like that have been just locked down, which is that's another podcast on its own.
Yeah, that would be, well, who knows? That'd be fun to explore too. I have my thoughts about it, but as everyone does, so maybe it wouldn't be that interesting. But
how could our audience get a hold of you, listen to your podcast, and follow you? Where are the best spots?
Well, the podcast is called How Did Happen? How Did Happen Podcast. You can get that on any of the podcast apps, or my website, howdidhappen.com, or Mike Malatesta, Malatesta.com. You can get there, either of those URLs. LinkedIn is great. That's how I connect with a lot of people, is on LinkedIn. So Mike Malatesta, I know there's probably not many of them. So that's a great way to get a hold of me as well.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your conversation today. It was a lot of fun, and I'm sure we'll be doing this again, brother.
Well, I hope I've given you some positive energy so you don't have to spend too much time in your driveway when you get home.
We ended up bringing all this negativity talking about COVID. So now
sorry. That was your fault. You went there. Jeff, it's been a lot of fun, man. I really do appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk to you. And just as I did when you came on my show, I'm completely impressed by what you're doing, not just with the podcast, but with your, working with dads, or what, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but
Man's Purpose is it's a community. It's funny you said a community. It's essentially, I'm just trying to build a community of entrepreneurial dads. Yeah, everybody interacts, everybody works together, everybody socializes, everybody helps each other. My goal is to build this massive community where everybody's constantly building and growing together. So that is my goal with that little venture right now.
Yeah, well, it's very impressive. So I thank you for the work you're doing, and appreciate your friendship as well.
Thank you. That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our guest, Mike, for taking time out of his busy schedule to be a guest on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. Great episode, great conversation. If you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, like all weeks, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word. We always appreciate feedback. Leave a review. 5 stars would be greatly appreciated. We always love spending time reading the reviews. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.